Welcome back to Missing. This is part 2 of our conversation with Michael Bayer, who made the documentary Vanished, the Heather Elvis Case. And then we're going to play our final thoughts after the interview. Lance, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling really fired up because we're about to embark on these final thoughts, and I have a lot of them when it comes to this. But if folks haven't heard part 1, just go back one episode and you can hear part 1, and the conversation that we had with Michael Bayer was fantastic. And if you want more information about Michael Bayer's film Vanished, more information about Heather Elvis, just go right to the website, vanishedfilm.com. Check everything out there. And Tim, did you mention that you can watch this multi-part documentary on Tubi?
Not yet. It is now available to stream for free on Tubi, and it is a 3-part documentary, and we highly recommend it. It is a great piece of investigative filmmaking. So check it out there. There is a link in the show notes, and we're going to break quick for commercial here, and we'll be back at the end of the interview with Michael Bayer to give our final thoughts. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And can you tell us about Tammy's sister, too? Was she suspected in beating up Heather, giving her that black eye?
She was suspected. There was cell phone data between Tammy and her sister in regards to, hey, is she at the tilt of kill? Is she looking out? I don't know if she's the one who did it or whatnot, but she seemed to be one of these people who was definitely in Tammy Moore's corner and doing what you can to help. I don't know. I mean, she was they had a video of her helping clean the car. She was doing that, burning the rags. So, I mean, I don't know how deep her involvement was. I don't want to say anything, but just based off of kind of the things we put her cell phone communication between her and Tammy, and then also what we saw in the video, her helping out and cleaning things like that. I mean, it could have been, right. I mean, that makes you think, how involved was she in helping out?
Yeah, and I guess kind of a short walk to Tammy's dad. At this point, that is one of the more shocking parts of the docuseries, I will say. The part where there's like an investigator who describes when he met Tammy's dad. Can you briefly, I don't want to spoil anything, but can you briefly take us through that?
So we don't know who's all involved in this. I mean, there could have been, and I think, and other people think as well, there could have been multiple people. I mean, how do you get rid of a body? You know, and was it 2 people? Was it more than one person? I mean, how many people to cover all this up? How many people were also involved? Tammy's father, when the investigators went over there, I don't want to spoil it and how he all mentioned that, but we did look into him possibly, being maybe somebody who could have been involved. My 9-year-old nephew watched this with my sister, and he goes, it is interesting. He goes, your movie was I watched it. My Uncle Mike, it was really good. I just wonder who was in that truck. And I was like, a 9-year-old, it's like, we still don't know who was in that truck, So it could have been, was it Tammy? Was it Sydney? Was it someone else? We don't know. I mean, we have people on kidnapping charges. We don't have people on murder charges. And I think that played a big role in it. And Jimmy Richardson, he was asked multiple times why didn't you bring murder charges? You don't have a body. It's a lot more difficult. Could he have gotten the convictions? I don't know. And if he'd have lost, he couldn't have tried him again. Obviously, I've seen interviews on Long Crime TV and people saying, you know what, he should have brought murder charges, a slam dunk case, so easy. It's like, I don't know. You don't know who's in that truck. You don't know where the bodies. You don't have a murder weapon. So I think and to get the kidnapping, I think was smart because now they're behind bars. They can talk. More information can come forward. If you look at what happened with Brittany Drexel, eventually they were able to find out who did it, and the person cracked. They knew they had a very good idea on who did it, so it eventually came out.
Yeah, very, very difficult and a complicated situation trying a no body homicide. So I think, but it seems like they got kind of a strict sentence for kidnapping. It seems
30 years.
Yeah, pretty good. Now, can you take us through that account of the truck? Who was driving it and everything? Yeah.
We don't know. I mean, that we don't know. But they do, one thing I think was very interesting, and I think another huge deterrent of crime. And anybody who owns a home, put a Ring doorbell on your front door or anywhere in your house, because they picked up the truck with certain surveillance cameras. And again, 2013, 2014, people are starting to just get that. I think now almost everyone has one. Again, that's a huge way to deter crime and to catch suspects, are these cameras. So they also played a role in that. But you're not able to see who's inside that truck. They know the truck went down to the boat landing. They know the truck came back, and they could tell the speed was slower going down and quicker going back. So what are you up to if you're driving down to that area? That truck definitely matched Sydney Moore's. And they also had experts come out and try to, I don't want to ruin it, but certain aspects of the truck that you could try to pin that had the same, you could identify that being his exact model or his exact truck. It's something that the prosecution brought up in the trial, and I think was an important piece of evidence as well.
Yeah, that really was brilliant that the charge was kidnapping and not murder, because they saw what they had without the body. I thought that was a really powerful part.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and where they're giving their closing arguments and they have to kind of clarify to the jury, this isn't a murder trial. This isn't a murder trial. But I felt like that was brilliant, because the more that they said murder, just the word murder, and then said it's not a murder trial, just made everyone think like, well, we know there's a murder, so we're just taking the logical steps to get there. Let's just do this first step now. And I don't know if you had interaction to this level with the prosecuting team, but was that part of the process to say, like, we're going to indicate murder everywhere, but we're going to make sure that they know it's kidnapping first?
I really, really thought that Nancy Livesay, who was the main prosecutor on this case, did an amazing job. I mean, she is hands down, because I watch a lot of trials. I mean, she's just an amazing, amazing job. And I watched 3 of the trials. I'm like, then I talked to her too. And I said, Nancy, I thought you did really good with doing this and doing that. And she's like, thank you. You watched all 3 trials. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, amazing prosecutor. And I love your closing, and I love your cross-examination of Tammy. I mean, because you don't want to come off harsh either, and you want to come off likable, but you got to be a little stern at points.
Yeah.
And I think she did a really, really good job. And I thought, I thought Sydney and Tammy had great counsel. They didn't have like some, a public defender who could have cared less about the case. I mean, they had really, really good lawyers. I thought, especially in how I thought one of the cross-examination was, or one of the witnesses was Sydney Moore's cousin, the one who saw the picture of, saying he saw the picture of Heather Elvis on his phone, lifeless. And, the way Tammy's lawyer cross-examined him to see if he was telling the truth and not lying. I mean, just grilling. I mean, I was like, okay. Once I saw that, I was like, yeah, he's pretty credible. I mean, he was able to really withstand a lot, but it was a good job from a criminal defense lawyer doing his job and making sure that person's telling the truth. As for Nancy Livesay, I think one of the key elements to getting the conviction on kidnapping was the phone call. The phone call was the luring. Sidney didn't deny it. He admitted it. He lied about it, and then he admitted it later, which really makes the jury think, well, why is he lying about something? And then later saying, okay, yeah, that was me who called, and calling from a payphone when everyone has cell phones. I mean, who calls from a payphone anymore? He even mentioned that in his
They still make payphones?
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought that the police officer who questioned him did an amazing job. And I went up, and he was in Pennsylvania. Actually, I had to go up and interview him. It was crazy, but it was like in and out. I flew into DC, had to drive up there, did the interview, came back, but it was very important. It was a very important interview. But I thought for the kidnapping aspect of this trial, I thought the luring, and Nancy Livesay nailed it at the end. She's like, look, this isn't murder, but that phone call lured her, and the luring is the kidnapping. And if you're on that jury, it's like, okay, this isn't murder, but that he admitted to making that phone call, and he lied about it first, and her car was found there. She's gone now. I mean, it makes a strong case to vote guilty for the kidnapping. And again, I think they would have had a tough time with the murder charge. You do not know who's in that truck. I think Jimmy Richardson made the right call.
If you talk to Nancy still, can you just relay this message to her? The
Sure.
line where she pulls the plug out of Tammy, and you literally see Tammy just deflate there. When Tammy uses Nancy's first name, and Nancy's like, have we met? Because I was just wondering when we're on first name basis. Was so amazing. It was probably the most badass thing I've seen in a live courtroom trial. And it just said so much about Tammy's personality. And her quick response to it was just brilliant. Like, I think she even said after she didn't plan to say it. It just came out. But I can't, like, the jury must have immediately seen how Tammy's trying to manipulate that situation, trying to switch the power dynamic there. And why is she doing that? And I think her response to that just totally shut it down and revealed it. So anyway, let her know. Next time you talk to her, say, random podcaster guy was really impressed with that.
I'll let her know. No, I will. I agree. I said it to her as well. I mean, how she handled that situation was incredible. And I think the other part, and I don't want to give away too much, but I thought part of that testimony was a timeline, the alibi that Tammy was coming up with, and how she just, questioned her on it and wore her down to the point where, I mean, she started even almost telling the truth, like, no, no, like, it's just like, you kind of see, it's just kind of almost like a bullfight where at the end, the bull is just kind of sitting there. And that's kind of what that testimony looked like to me. So I think textbook on how you do it. And it's hard because you have the truth on your side as the prosecution, but you have to show the jury that, and you don't want to come off as the bad guy, you did this and you did that, just show. And she did such an amazing job. I agree. And we capture that. And we really capture the key points of that testimony in the documentary.
Yeah, that was great. One moment that was kind of infuriating near the end of the documentary was from Tammy when she spoke in court. And it was right around that same part where she said that she wanted to know what happened to Heather just as badly as Heather's family did. And that is kind of like a tell, in my opinion, almost like a poker tell. Like, nobody does, actually. Nobody wants to know as bad as Heather's family. So you're lying, and now we can see that manipulation even further,
Yeah, and I think, one of the most, any trial, one of my favorite parts is hearing after somebody is found guilty to hear what they have to say. I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer came up and he said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm a evil person," and blah, blah, how they talk to the victims. And Tammy, hearing what she had to say and how she said it shows her character. The character comes out once you are found guilty by 12 jurors. And the whole room knows you did it because you've been, the jury panel, not one person, a whole jury panel sat and heard all this evidence against you. What do you say to these victims? What do you say? I mean, it just tells everything about a person. Not to say I think Jeffrey Dahmer is a psychopath and crazy in the fact that he, apologized. I mean, I'm not saying that it changes anything, but it's very interesting to hear what these people say.
So were you able to show this documentary to the Elvis family, and did you get a reaction from them? What did they think about it? And I can't even imagine how tough it must have been to watch certain parts, especially the reenactments, when you have to draw your own conclusions in order to make a cohesive narrative there. What were their thoughts on all that?
I think, okay, so Debbie, I became close with her. We spoke on the phone a lot, and I finished it. Here, Debbie, take a look at it. If there's anything that you want me to change, or, if there's something you want, let me know, because this is your story. And she goes, okay. She watched it and she called me. She said, you did a really good job. And, you really focused on our side of the story. There's a few things, can you do this or do that? And we did, and everything worked out. And, but I mean, nothing big. I mean, she was happy with, 99%, so, and she goes, at least this tells at least people who had any doubt that we were involved or weren't involved or whatever. At least this puts that to bed. I think anybody who watches this documentary and still thinks that Terry or any of us is hiding any information or any part of this, I think if they watch something like this, they're going to see our side of the story. And thanks a lot for doing that. So they were happy. I think she liked this. She said the same thing about the person who played Sydney. She goes, God, he looks just like Sydney. So she thought that too. And she thought they did a good job. She said, you know what, they did an excellent job of doing that. And so, yeah, I think they were happy in the end. And also Chris Elvis is the older brother of Heather. And he was kind of out of the picture when this whole thing was going on. And we actually, Access Hollywood, Mario Lopez did a segment on the story. And he was actually on that segment and speaking for the first time about his thoughts of everything that happened in the case. So he watched the full documentary and he really liked it. And he said, I want to get this out to as many people. And I said, wait till it's up on, the streaming platforms like Tubi and those places. You're going to get a lot of eyeballs. He liked it and he watched it and he said it was very, very hard to watch. And I think it would be, but he watched as well. So yeah, I mean, I had positive feedback from them, and that's important to me. Very, very important because it's their story. I wanted to portray him in the best way possible that they would be happy with.
Yeah, and one of the most, I guess, emotional parts was involving Heather's mom when the Moores were initially charged with kidnapping and murder, and her reaction, Heather's mom's reaction to the murder charges was, I think, she was happy at first that, okay, good, well, they're going to get them. But then she had friends come to her and kind of realize that, this means that her daughter is dead. And I found that part especially profound.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, I think when you watch this documentary, I mean, I think we did a good job. And we as Summer Dash and I did a good job of really getting the emotions out in this and just kind of how they felt and what they had to go through emotionally during this whole thing, getting the murder charges dropped, having to deal with your daughter being missing during the holidays, dealing with all these trolls online, dealing with the stresses of, where your daughter is. And then also people saying you did it, So we wanted to get that side out and make it emotional, make people be able to feel what it would be like to be in that type of situation, which I can't imagine. But I think when you watch this, you really feel the pain. You really do.
Absolutely. And I know we've said a few times, like, we don't want to give away any spoilers or we don't want to ruin anything, but I feel like the listeners are going to wonder how we've been talking for so long without actually giving anything away. And it is because the documentary is so good. It's so engaging. And I don't know how much more we could possibly say that would give anything away. I mean, even if we were to give the play-by-play of the ending of this, people would still go and watch it because they want to see it all play out, because everything's so meticulously crafted in the reenactments. Sometimes those can go so wrong in a documentary. And yep. they can absolutely kill the entire thing, but the way that they're pieced together and the way that they're filmed here it's pretty seamless. So I just want to rest.
Thanks.
We can rest assured that I think people aren't going to be like, well, I heard the story, so I'm not going to watch the documentary. I think we've just scratched the surface here, and the documentary there's so much underneath.
You hit it on the head. I mean, it's not an informational documentary. That's the difference. It's not the story's been told. I mean, if you want to go see watch the investigation discovery, I'll tell you play by play, all the evidence. We got deeper into it. We got the emotion out. We, what it feels like to go through a situation like this. And I think that's what I wanted to do, is really to get that emotional part out of the story. And the Elvis family opened up, and it's not easy to do. It really is not easy to do, but you really feel what they went through. And Summer was the one who interviewed Terry and Debbie and Morgan as well. She just did an amazing job of getting them to talk about what it was like to go through something like this. I mean, being there in the room too, it was just just listening it's not easy.
All right, we're going to take a quick break for commercial. And just a reminder, folks, that we will return at the end of this conversation with some final thoughts.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. And are you planning another documentary?
We do. We have another one that we're almost finished with. It's way more lighthearted. It's about this guy in Los Angeles. They dubbed him the Dine and Dash Dater. And what he would do is he would meet women on dating apps. And he would, he would say he was a man of means. Maybe he was a lawyer. Maybe he owned a business or something like that. And then he would, hey, we're going to get this great dinner over at a place in Beverly Hills or anywhere else in Los Angeles. And, he'd get steak and lobster and, and he'd wine and dine. And then in the middle of the dinner, he'd take off. He'd stick the woman with the bill. And the story went viral, and that's part of it. The story went viral because one of the women posted online and obviously just took off, and they couldn't find the guy. And this guy did this for years. And, it was on Good Morning America. KCAL News picked it up and just hit another restaurant, and then this detective got on it. So it's an interesting story because it's not the crime of the century, but it's a bizarre story. Only would happen in Los Angeles, by the way.
What time period did this happen in?
Like 5-6 years ago, or we had like 2018, 2017 around there.
I think Tim was still in LA around that time, and that's
I was not. You stop it.
But we did. I will say this. We just wrapped up our last interview, and we interviewed his mother, who very, very nice person. And she kind of gave us a little more background into the situation. It is kind of a sad story of kind of how he ended up in that situation and everything that unfolded after. But it's lighthearted. It's not a joke. It is a crime. There's real victims here. We interviewed them. They're very nice. Very, very nice to share their story. So that's what we're coming out with next. It should be out next summer around there. But again, we do these documentaries the way where we really get good reenactments and we put a lot into editing. So it does take time. We just don't want to, throw it up together. And that's something we do as well with True Case Films. We're not looking to be the first documentary to get a story out. Like we were the first one, and it's going to hit the algorithm, and I get it. It's easier to do it that way. And if you're, bigger company like Netflix, you just put these things together. So we're not that. So our thing is going deeper into the stories that we want to tell that it might be a little older, but we can tell them in a deeper way.
The first night that they had ever hung out was the night of the baseball game. Heather and I went back to the Kilt to get fries, and she introduced me to him. And was like, oh, he's so hot, I want to jump his bones. And I was disgusted. I personally didn't see the attractiveness in him at all. I think that Sydney and Heather's relationship in the very beginning was meant to be fun and young and a hookup, and then I think that the more time the two of them spent together, the more that their attraction and their caring for each other, it grew. And when I went to leave that night, she stayed back to hang out with him.
All right, Lance, back here for final thoughts after the conversation with Michael Bayer about the disappearance of Heather Elvis. How are you doing? How are you feeling about this case?
Yeah, I feel dirty. I feel like, I think I told you this when we first watched the documentary. I think I said to you, like, I wanted to take a shower after part 2 because you just kind of saw where it was going, and you just feel gross watching these people. Watching Sydney, watching Tammy manipulate this young woman and ignore the uncontrollable impulses of a pervert in Sydney Moore. I mean, this is just a person acting out of their own sexual hormonal desires to a young woman. And that bothers me like nothing else. Like, working at a restaurant like the Tilted Kilt, the guy gets turned on seeing all of these young women walking around in their uniforms, and I don't care about the Tilted Kilt. I'm talking about somebody who was hired to do a job in there who just can't keep it to himself and takes advantage of Heather Elvis. Very impressionable person. I'm not saying that all women her age were that impressionable, but he was a person that was of authority. He was a person that was older, and this complete disgusting monster took advantage of her. And it makes you feel bad for everybody involved, including Heather's friends, because they had to see all that happen.
Yeah, so Sydney was the man in this story who I guess kind of became Heather's boyfriend, but he was also married. to a woman named Tammy. And so he was some kind of like maintenance worker who came in and out of restaurants, I guess, to do some sanitation or something like that. So he wasn't at the Tilted Kilts full time.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah.
In.
No, he wasn't like a manager or something there. He came in to do a job there. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was there as a coworker, an older coworker. Heather Elvis was 20 years old when she went missing, you know, so she was, you know, taken advantage of by an older man who should have known better, you know, and the relationship between Sidney and his wife, Tammy, probably wasn't great. Doesn't give someone the excuse to act out in the way that he did.
Yeah.
But the dynamic between Sidney and his wife, Tammy, I think has a big part to do with this story.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Sidney is completely at Tammy's beck and call. He is very submissive in this relationship. She's definitely the dominant one. And just to maybe further elaborate the statement you just said about he should have known better, he definitely knew better. He just didn't give a shit. He just thought he was going to be able to get away with what he was doing with Heather. And I didn't think about this until we talked about him working there or working for the establishment. Yeah, he did come in as a contract worker, but everybody knew that they were having a relationship. And how the manager of the Tilted Kilt, who definitely knew, because we've all worked in restaurants and we all know how information travels, and they were even saying in the documentary, everyone knew. Everyone knew that there was something going on with them. They made they didn't make it secret at all when they were at the restaurant. The manager should have hauled that guy's ass out and said, "You're not working here anymore. This is not something that's going to be happening with my employees at this restaurant. I know they're both adults and they have their right to do it, but that should have been something that the manager put a stop to pretty quickly."
I agree there. Yeah, definitely led to bad stuff. You know, this guy.
It never leads to good stuff. That doesn't lead to good stuff. Guys telling her, "Don't worry, we have an open relationship. Me and my wife have an open relationship." Okay, so if you called your wife right now, she'd be totally cool with this.
Right.
She wasn't.
So no, and in fact, she may or may not have handcuffed Sidney to the bed after this. So she did find out about Heather and Sidney's relationship, and apparently, you know, handcuffed. This is what Sidney told the police, that she handcuffed him to the bed while he was sleeping so he couldn't go anywhere. Now, Tammy denied that. But again, this kind of tells you this gives you some insight into their dynamic. And by the way, like we said, like, you know, the dominant one in the relationship, things like that, there doesn't really have to be a dominant person in relationships. Actually, they work better when there really isn't one. Mm-hmm. So kind of wild how it went so weird for them, Sidney and Tammy. Like, I don't understand how that develops in that way, where it does seem like Tammy was dominant in wanting to hurt Heather. I will say, because Tammy's sister may or may not have attacked Heather Elvis. Tammy's father may have even helped cover up this disappearance. We don't 100% know how deep it goes on Tammy's side of the family.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Heather's father was shot at.
Yes. And very easily could have been murdered. And, you know, that could have been Heather's sister instead of her father, who was shot at. But yeah, hid behind garbage cans. Oh my God. That is such a harrowing moment in this documentary. And I don't believe it was proven who it was, but, you know, without defaming anyone here in these final thoughts, I feel like we have a pretty good idea who it might have been. I mean, so who else would it have been, right? It would have been just random. We're saying it's random if it wasn't someone as a part of this, like, larger story, this disappearance.
Right. It's just a random shooting in this town that probably doesn't have a lot of random shootings. Come on, like, this is just happenstance that this family is shot at around the time that they're putting the charges to this other family members. Like, they're all gross people. They're all gross people, and I have no problem saying that they're gross people. And they took advantage of somebody who was not a gross person, who came from a good home, who was just trying to, live a life, like just trying to live a life, and she got taken advantage of. And the whole thing about Sydney being complacent and even being like enabling Tammy and agreeing with Tammy and being a part of the whole like stalking of Heather. And it is so like repulsive to me as well, because that means that they had a conversation and Tammy was like, what is going on with I'll try to like simplify the conversation as best I can in this example. What's going on with Heather? She's all over me. This is Sydney. She's all over me. I can't leave her alone. Yes, something happened. Yeah, sorry. What do you expect from me? He admits to hooking up with her. And then Tammy's like, we need to put her in her place. And then he's complacent in that. And then he's complacent in Tammy's plan to save his own ass. To save his own ass so that Heather doesn't say, I wasn't a one-time thing. He told me that he loved me. I told him I loved him. Like, he just wanted it to go away, and whatever Tammy wanted, he was totally complacent in, because then he's, like, on Tammy's side, and he doesn't have to be, like, reprimanded by her. And his little secret can stay his little secret. It's a good thing that he's been locked up. I mean, that's a potential serial rapist. And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. It's a situation, a couple of personalities that I don't know if like the term folie à deux comes into play here with the two of them, but basically, yeah, the madness of two, right? Two people who kind of concoct some wild plan that they think they've outsmarted everybody in, and they think that they can get away with it, but in reality, they're just stupid, and they were never going to get away with it. So I don't know if that's what happened between the two of them, where they kind of just fed on each other, and it was like a deadly combination of personalities. This does remind me of the case of the murder of Melissa Jenkins from Vermont at the hands of Patricia and Alan Prue. And it's kind of a similar story, Lance, about Patricia and Alan Prue when they murdered Melissa Jenkins, who was a beloved science teacher in Vermont. And this happened in 2012. It was a husband and wife who sort of tricked Melissa Jenkins, and they attacked her and they murdered her. And they were both found guilty for it. But it's the dynamic there is what reminded me of this case, because Patricia in that scenario seems to be more of the dominant personality than Alan, who Alan, I'm not trying to insult anyone, but he seemed like he might have been lacking a little bit of intelligence, and Patricia was, a little bit smarter than him and manipulated him. But again, it takes two to tango here. But that's sort of what we're talking about, is like this combination of personalities sort of leads to something really bad.
Absolutely. And I wonder if Tammy and Sydney had gotten away with this, if this would have been something that would have happened again. If they would have actually turned into more of the Prues, where they actively seek out young women instead of, Sydney having a casual affair with somebody who he was acquainted with.
Well, they could have let it go. I mean, they did for a period of time, kind of let it go once, Sydney confessed to his wife and they broke up. He broke up with Sydney or with Heather. They weren't together for a while. And then this pregnancy test and this pregnancy rumor comes into play. So we don't know if Heather was pregnant, but she very well could have been pregnant by Sydney. And that may have been what led Sydney and Tammy to kind of, I guess, double back and then start stalking Heather. And then really, it leads to her disappearance and kidnapping and likely murder, because they kind of went back into it. So, yeah, I don't know. Don't know if Heather was pregnant, but I think circumstantially speaking, I think it makes a lot of sense if she was.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that there was a pregnancy test because that was admitted to even though
Yep.
Sydney said that was a pregnancy test that Tammy was taking, which is completely ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous because the statement that he made that we see in the documentary is like, it makes me gag. He just feels the need to, I don't know, it just indicates, the way he says it indicates like him and Tammy had a healthy sex life. That they're, we're just an average couple. We're just an average couple. It always blows my mind why people just can't take responsibility for the actions of themselves. If she was pregnant.
Why in the world is kidnapping the first thing? Why are we talking about this? Why are we going down that road? Why aren't we saying, like, are we going to look into abortion options here? Are we going to look into, you're now the father of this child and you need to figure out how to raise this child in a responsible manner? Do we want to put this child up for adoption? I mean, those were three off the top of my head that are very, very, very far away from kidnapping and murder. So yes, I wonder if they would have escalated to the level of the Prues where they get a little taste of this and now they're like actively looking for young women to bring into their sordid circle.
Well, I will say definitely because of that sort of break. And, we don't know that the Prues had other victims either. So I think it's so much like them because they did just go after her. They stalked her. They lured her into this spot where she was susceptible enough to go missing and apparently get into the car with someone that she trusted, most likely Sydney. At that point, it was late at night. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning in this isolated area that they lured her to.
Yeah. I love that that's what they got the couple on. I love that that's what they got Sydney and Tammy on. That this isn't about murder. And we said it during the interview, and I just cannot commend the prosecution more. Because the more they say that it's not about murder, that word is still, the more you pound that into the jury's head. This isn't about murder. We're not talking about the murder of Heather Elvis. We're talking about the intentional kidnapping. We're talking about luring them there. The deliberate, premeditated kidnapping. We can't talk about murder because we haven't found a body. All you're doing there is just saying that murder was inevitable, but we're not there yet. I thought that was just brilliant.
Yeah, they're not charging anyone with murder yet, but they did get pretty harsh sentences for Sydney and Tammy for kidnapping. They got 30 years for kidnapping.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So that's pretty harsh for that sentence or for that charge. But also they do need to find Heather. She needs to be found because what if she was pregnant? Like these Moorers, they could very easily get out of prison if they don't find Heather. And their time is going to be served at some point, 25 years or something like that. They're probably not going to serve a full 30. They're probably going to serve 20 to 25 maybe, and then they're going to be free if they don't find Heather and can't charge them with murder or try them with murder. And this could be a double murder too if Heather was pregnant.
And that is also a brilliant prosecution move right there too. If you want to actually nail them for this, because you can do a DNA test. You could, clearly do a DNA test. The pregnancy test. I mean, everything lines up to show that Sydney found out that she was pregnant. Tammy found out that she was pregnant. Now all the puzzle pieces have come into place. Now it's time to set the trap and call it for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully Heather's body is found. If you do have any information in the disappearance of Heather Elvis, you can submit that to the South Carolina State Police. I don't want these people back on the street.
No, it's like repulsive. They're repulsive people, and they're no benefit to society whatsoever.
Yeah, and the clock is ticking, as far as law enforcement's ability to keep them in prison. That clock is ticking to where they have to find Heather. Otherwise, again, they're going to get out. And who knows what'll happen then. So yeah, pretty wild story, Lance. Really did appreciate the documentary. Even though this was a case that was, like pretty much begins and ends in the documentary, other than what we're talking about as far as finding Heather and potentially more charges. The case pretty much begins and ends in the documentary, and it's well told, and it's compelling all the way through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Good job to Michael Bayer for that. Excellent filmmaker. Can't wait to see what he's coming up with next, and yeah, I hope everybody checks it out, and can't wait to have him on again for the next one. But yeah, in the meantime, I'm gonna need to take another shower after talking about Sydney and Tammy again.
Yeah, definitely disgusting people. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for listening to our final thoughts in this story of Heather Elvis. Definitely check out the documentary. Links in the show notes. Free to watch on Tubi, Tubi. So check it out there. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll be back next week with another new episode.